KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to the Central Valley Ledger, a show highlighting community members that have a positive influence on the valley. I'm your host, Sevag Tateosian. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative in Fresno, Clovis, and broadcasting on 90.7 KFSR and CMAC's public channel. In this edition of the Central Valley Ledger, we'll be talking to Gabriel Dillard, the managing editor of the Business Journal. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
So I want to ask you a little bit about yourself before we get into talking about the Business Journal, which is a local publication in town. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm born and bred here in the Central Valley. I was born in Fresno. I moved to Selma for 5th grade, and so I graduated from Selma High School. I'm a Selma High School bear. I went to Fresno State, got my journalism degree. I've been with the Business Journal for about 11 years now. It's been the time of my life. Married, I have 2 kids, a daughter who's 4, a son who's 6. They give me this gray hair up at the top a little too prematurely, but yeah, that's my life.
I like talking to people. I like talking to everybody, but people who stay local, get educated local, and find a job local, those are like, in my opinion, those are great stories. But I see why people have wanted to leave and get educated somewhere else. So congratulations on staying local. What made you decide to go into journalism?
I always had an affinity for writing. It was always kind of a strong thing for me. I actually went to college hoping to be a doctor. Yeah. And I took a few science classes, and that kind of disabused me of that. But, journalism seemed, as opposed to maybe English or anything like that, it seemed like something where I could actually make a living doing it. Kind of an introvert, so it's sort of something that got me out of my bubble. So it's been a fun ride ever since. Just kind of getting out of my own head and meeting people, and I'm just addicted to news now. I love the feeling of like breaking a big story. It's like a drug almost.
So tell us how you ended up in Selma somehow, working in Selma.
Yeah, well, actually, I moved to Selma for 5th grade, and I graduated from there. But then after I graduated from college, I got a job at the Selma Enterprise, which was a small community paper there. And I was there for about a year. It was a good experience. This was the first time of my first full-time reporting job. And, it was easy. I grew up there, so I kind of knew who does what. So it was a really good way to learn. I had some good editors, and kind of led me to where I am now.
Share with us a little bit about the newspaper business. It's changing, isn't it?
It is. It's changing. Most would say not for the better. It's difficult. People just don't read news anymore. People don't. Well, if they do read, they'll be reading online. So the actual physical paper, delivered to your door every morning, that's kind of a thing of the past. People still subscribe to newspapers, but they tend to be older. Baby boomers, people, millennials, 30-somethings, they tend to get their news, on a tablet or the computer or their phone. So I don't know if people are consuming less news. I mean, if you look at social media, people still consume a lot of news on there. It's just, they don't have it on the page.
I've been dying to ask someone in newspapers to talk about fake news. So what is fake news?
Oh, I don't know. It seems like one of those terms that sort of get thrown around. When I first heard it, especially like on social media, you get these posts. People claim that such and such is happening, the sky is falling, and people tend to believe that sort of thing. And so fake news is it could be whatever you want. Like the Russians, apparently they use fake news to push, an election one way or the other. To me, it's just something that's inaccurate, which I don't really think applies to most legitimate news sources. Like your local newspaper, or your TV station. I kind of have a feeling that most of those people are doing the right thing, making sure the facts are correct. Sometimes sometimes it's not correct, and we'll do our job and fix it. But it seems like it's turned into a catch-all for anything, and it's almost one of those terms that really doesn't have a meaning anymore.
How do you know, like, I'm sure that you get stuff all the time of people wanting you to write stories about it. How do you go through and find what's real and what's not? I guess that's a good research. That's the researcher and the journalist.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to be skeptical. That there are people that you work with day in and day out that you come to trust. So if somebody new comes along, maybe, you get a pitch from somebody and you bounce it off somebody you trust and say, hey, do you know this guy? Do you know what this person's about? It's not easy, and there's been plenty of stories that we've covered that, later turned out to not completely be what we were told. Running Horse is an example from a long time ago, but something that happened was an investment scheme, essentially, and I had a chance to sit down with those developers, and I got caught up in the dream they had of building a golf course in West Fresno, and it sounded great, but it turned out to be a dream, a pipe dream.
And so your role is unique as a journalist because you want to be the optimist. You want to cover the news that is going to make people say, wow, but then at the same time you have to kind of really think about it. And so no one would have guessed that Running Horse would turn out the way it was. So, but it's always interesting. That aspect is always interesting. So the Business Journal, you've been around for a very long time. Share with us a little bit of history.
Yeah, my boss, Gordy Webster, he's the publisher. His great-great-grandfather, M.S. Webster, founded the business. He didn't found it. He bought the newspaper. He was here in Fresno. It was in 1886.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
He moved out here as a teenager. He was a shepherd up in the mountains, and he eventually bought a newspaper. I think it was $180, the purchase price for the Business Journal. It's called the Abstract of Records back then. But it's been through a lot of iterations. It's always been public advertising, which means if people have to go to the courthouse or the Hall of Records to file like a trustee sale or something like that, that's all public information, and that's valuable information to a lot of people. So even back then, that's the sort of news that got covered is a lot of like real estate related stuff. But it's evolved since then. We just celebrated our 25th anniversary of actually having a newsroom. My boss created our newsroom about 25 years ago. The Business Journal is sort of a model that's taken off all over the country. Business Journals in most major metro areas. So here we are. 129 years later.
Congratulations on that. You're actually not too far from where we're sitting in downtown Fresno. Your headquarters are around the corner, I think.
Just a couple blocks down Venice. Yeah, I love downtown. It's a great place.
Well, and the reason I ask you that question is because you've had a front row seat then of what's going on in downtown, because right next to your building there's been construction.
Yes. Yeah, it's been amazing, especially, in the last couple years with Fulton Street, with a lot of the high-speed related work, high-speed rail stuff. It's just changed so much. And this is kind of the dream, kind of the vision that, a lot of people, Ashley Swearingen and people even before her kind of had. And it's been great to have that front row seat downtown.
Why should people subscribe to your newspaper? I go to your website all the time and I read the interesting articles, and it gives me a local perspective on what's happening in the business community. And I didn't know about the Hanford, the big company that's going into Hanford, the car company, until I went onto your website and I saw the stories. So I looked at that and I said, wow, we're going to get thousands of jobs in Hanford. Why should we support you?
Well, there aren't too many publications around here doing business news. The Fresno Bee has a business crew. It's kind of shrunk a little bit. A lot of those folks, they're really fine reporters, are kind of getting pulled off in other directions. So, as far as business to business, it's the interaction between businesses. That's really, we're going to be the source for that here in Fresno. We also cover Kings, Tulare, and Madera. It's a big area, but we do our best to, just provide the information and intelligence that, say, if you're a business owner, you want to know what's going on. You want to be able to plan for what your strategy is going to be as a business owner. You want to know what's happening, and you want to know who's coming, who's going, what so-and-so is doing today, tomorrow. We're that source.
You have a book of lists, I saw. What is this book of lists? And I see that you have a ton of lists in there.
Yeah, each week in our newspaper, we do what's called the list. And it's a ranked list of, it could be companies, it could be, just last week we did a ranked list of golf courses. And so basically we rank these companies based off of different criteria. We have a fastest growing company list where we get the revenue for each company. They self-report it, and we survey them. And we use that to rank them, from 1 to 20, 1 to 40. And so we do that each week, and at the end of the year, I think around March, we put out the book of lists, which is every single list from the prior year packed into one book. And it's really kind of you won't find it anywhere else, that information. We've put a lot of time, a lot of effort into building our database. So that's what that is. It's if you're a salesperson, if you're looking for leads, you just want to know who's the biggest bank, in town, who is the best hospital, or that we'll tell you.
So the hard newspaper, I'm afraid that one day it's going to be extinct. I hope not, because I'm still the fan of the person that reads the hard copy newspaper. What are your thoughts on that? You being in the business, and obviously this is just your opinion, but what are your thoughts on that?
That's a good question. I guess I might be sort of leaning towards there's probably a day where there might not be printed, newspapers on newsprint, kind of the brownish sort of floppy paper that we get every day. The people who subscribe to newspapers are kind of dying out. Magazines are still around, glossy sort of. I think in the future things are going to be a little more high quality when it comes to the printed word. And then the kind of the newspaper, the fish wrap, if you will, I kind of think that it may not go completely away, but it's, it won't ever be what it was, and it probably won't be what it is today, 10 years from now.
Technology is going so fast. I mean, I remember reading about when the only thing in town was a newspaper, and everybody would get their news from the newspaper. Now it's much, much different. So when you are talking to somebody about getting into the business of writing or reporting, what advice do you give them?
I think they should read as much as they can. Read newspapers, read local newspapers, read national newspapers, watch the news on TV. Just be informed. The more connections you can make in your community and outside, the more things that you can see that are happening nationally have a bearing on what's happening locally, then you're thinking like a journalist at that point. And write as much as you can. For anybody, if it's just a blog on your own or Facebook page or Tumblr or whatever, just do it. And eventually, if you're looking for a career, you'll have something to show for. You'll have something to say. Hey, I do this. This is what I want to do, and I do it now, and I want to do it for you guys.
You have an interesting role in your position. I'm sure you do a lot of editing, and you may not, but I'm sure you do. Tell us about constructive criticism. So if I turn something into you, let's say I worked for you, I turned something into you and you changed it around. Should I be offended or should I learn from it?
I would hope you wouldn't be offended. Yeah, and it's hard to tell. Some people are better with taking criticism than others. But there's you do this long enough, you kind of learn. How your lead paragraph, it should be something that if somebody's going to read it, and they're not going to want to put it down. They're going to want to keep reading. So you want to make sure that first paragraph grabs you. You want to make sure that you don't leave any unanswered questions in your story. You don't want to make people more confused than before they started reading. So yeah, I I love criticism. It's hard to take sometime, but it's the only way you get better.
Tell us a little bit more about the stories you cover. You cover business stories, but is there that like gem of a story you're looking for? I mean, what is it that when Gabriel gets the email or phone call, you say, you know what, we got to be there, and we got to be there right now?
I love the job creators, the Amazons, the Ulta, the Faraday Future, the electric car company that you mentioned before. A lot of people say if it bleeds, it leads, but it's, and that's true to an extent, but it's really the best part, the best time I have is covering positive news, because that means something. I'm from this community. I know people who could use a good job. And that means jobs, and it means people are going to be able to support their families. So I love those sorts of stories, when it's, especially, even if it's not a big employer, if it's just a local restaurant or something, it's positive, and I love doing the positive stuff.
How is our economy, and I know you're not in that business, but you see news all the time, good and bad. Do we have a good economy here?
Well, our unemployment is as low as it's probably ever been. It's still higher than other parts of the state. You have, like I said, Amazon and Ulta coming in, so there's an interest. We're in a central part of California where if you're in the distribution business, you want to move goods around California. You want to be in the middle of California. If you're like a brick and mortar retailer, it's maybe not so good. You have a lot of those closing, a lot of nationally owned companies kind of closing businesses here in Fresno. Payless Shoe Store is one of them. There's been several this year. A lot of it is related to, some of the same issues that are dogging my industry, which is technology. If you could go on your phone and order all your groceries and have them delivered or go pick them up, it's you might not want to go into that store and spend the time to browse. So it's a mixed bag. I think it seems like it's better than it was, 10 years ago. That was a really bad time. I think there's a lot of ways to go. I think people need to build up kind of the educational resources. They need to be trained for the sorts of jobs that are going to be here in the future. So I think it's positive, but there's a lot of way to go.
Share with us a little bit about some of the big stories that, two parts of a question. Lately, what's big other than the job creator stories? Anything big that you've been covering?
It's the jobs. The job creators are kind of the big stories. There's kind of a ramp up in construction. A lot of the infrastructure stuff that's happening related to rail, and you can't drive across Fresno these days without getting stuck in some sort of traffic because of construction. So that's big. It's kind of what you see. A lot of it is some of the stores closing. You notice that sort of thing as well. Those are sort of the big trends. It's just kind of a really time of transition, it seems, for the Valley, and going through something and kind of what's at the other end is kind of a big question.
Where can people find your publication? So I know we can go online and subscribe to it, but where else can we find it? People who subscribe,
they actually get it in the mail every Friday, so we mail it out. If you could find newsstands, we have newsstands at some Starbucks locations. One here, the one downtown. We have the one over at over by the courthouse is the one I'm forgetting the name of the building right now. Some red carpet car wash locations here. I think we're at Yosemite Falls. So there's newsstands around town. You could go to thebusinessjournal.com and find a list of all of our newsstands.
If I'm a business owner, should I subscribe to you, and why?
I believe you should. We try to do as much to point out trends that are happening here in the Valley with business. A lot of the documental news that I referred to before, that sort of we've based our foundation on. We still do it. We still provide it. And a lot of times it's a lead, for people who are looking to sell something, or you want to do business with other businesses, it's a resource. People, we say over there that people can open the paper, and if you know what you're doing, you can make some money based off of the information that you see in the paper, and hopefully that'll pay for your sub right there.
How do you know when a story is done? I mean, when I'm writing, I could continue to go on and on, but there's a time where I say, okay, enough, story's done, move on. What are your thoughts on that? How do you know when a story's done?
Well, it's a weird time now because with the web, the news cycle is constant. So a lot of times, we're working on a story, and the goal is to get it out as quickly as possible. So it's really when you have all of your sourcing, correct. It's balanced. If somebody's saying something bad about somebody, you want to give that person a chance to respond. I mean, that happens a lot. So you want to have that balance. You want to have make sure all your facts are correct. Sometimes you need to reach somebody on the phone, and they don't get back to you, so you kind of scramble. So it's different. For the web, it's like as soon as possible. As soon as we have that complete picture, we want to go live because we want to beat everyone else. We want to be that source that people go to, I read this here first. In print, it's different. You can sort of take your time. We're a weekly, so there we can massage things a little bit, but a lot of times with the web, it's just as quickly as possible.
I heard you on KMJ, so I know that you're on KMJ. When and how can people find more information?
Yeah, I've been doing it's a morning call-in with KMJ every morning it's every Monday morning. Sorry, at about 7:49, I get to call in and spend about 5 minutes talking to. It's usually Tony Manez, their morning drive guy. It used to be Ray Appleton. And yeah, we'll talk about kind of the big stories for the week. I have about maybe 5-6 minutes. Tons of people listen to it. I mean, that's probably the one thing that, if I meet somebody, it'll be, hey, I hear you on KMJ.
You on KMJ.
Yeah, I mean, it really gives you an idea of just how much of an audience that station has. I mean, it's among the top rated radio stations here in the Valley. So, and their transmitter just goes all over the state. So it's been a great opportunity for me. I enjoy doing it. I could call in and I'm wearing my PJs, it's the morning, I just woke up, and not as much pressure to look pretty, if you will, but it's a good experience. It's been great for me.
Looking back at your career, and this is a tough question, your favorite story that you covered is what? That's a tough one.
It is, and they all kind of blur together. Probably one of my favorite stories I've ever done was actually about a year into my time there. So this was about 2007. And I got to an interview with this guy who, he was in a program called SCORE through SBA. It's actually the Service Corps of Retired Executives. So these are folks who have been business executives who, they're retired, they want to give back. So what they volunteer themselves to mentor other business owners, people who are just starting out. It's sort of a resource you can't really beat. But I had a chance to interview a gentleman. It was so long ago, I can't remember his name. But he was, I think he was a business owner here in the Valley. He made his I wouldn't say fortune. I mean, he made his bones doing building. I think he called them shook, which basically it was those wooden boxes that used to put like all the produce in, when you're selling, you're transporting it. That used to be made out of wood, before. Now it's plastic. But that was my favorite interview. I actually ended up winning an award, a statewide award for doing that. That was part of it. But this was 10 years ago, and the thing that stands out the most to me was he was telling me about his service in World War II, and you, especially these days, you don't really get a chance to talk to some of our veterans, the greatest generation. And it was just, he was nice enough to tell me a little bit about those experiences. He was he worked on a bomber, and I forget exactly. I think he might have been a radio guy or something on a bomber, and he explained to me, what it was like to do that sort of thing. And it really made an impression on me. And I think I was able to kind of flip that around and make an impression on the readers. So Usually my favorite stories will be related to just meeting somebody who's just a dynamite person, somebody you could really just learn from.
We are running out of time this week on the program, but I want an opportunity for people to sign up. Off air we were talking, and you're doing an email blast now, or you might have done it before, but I never knew about that, and I'm always on your website. So maybe I missed that part, but how can people sign up for this newsletter?
You could go on the businessjournal.com, sort of in the upper right-hand part of our homepage. There's a sign-up sheet and a little box, and you just enter your name or your email, and you'll receive our daily newsletters. We do one in the morning, which is a digest of stories from other local papers. So if you want to know what's happening in the Valley, but you don't want to take the time to read them all, we handle that for you. And then in the afternoon, we do a daily update newsletter, and that's a digest of all of our own stories that we do throughout the day. Yeah, you could sign up on our homepage. You could go to our Facebook page, TBJ Fresno, and you can sign up there too.
Sounds fun. I mean, and that sounds like a good way for us to know what's going on in the community as well. How do people find out more information about the Business Journal?
You could go to thebusinessjournal.com, and you could read all about our company. You could read about our reporters. You could read our news. If you want to advertise, you could read about how to do that. If if you're interested in business-to-business events here in the Valley, we have those. Really, our website is kind of our portal these days. People get this in the mail. You don't see it out in the street, so.
Gabriel, thank you. For a second there, I was going to call you Gordon. Gabriel, thank you so much. And I say that because Gordon Webster is the publisher of the
boss,
paper.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming this week on the program. I appreciated learning about your publication, and good luck to you.
Thank you, Sevag.
That wraps it up for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. You can watch more episodes of the Central Valley Ledger on CMAC's channels, Xfinity 93 and Uverse 99, or on CMAC's website, www.cmac.tv. You can listen to episodes of the Central Valley Ledger on 90.7 KFSR. Thanks to the volunteer crew that made this production and every production possible. We couldn't do this without you. To become a volunteer, visit CMAC's website and click on the membership tab. Thanks again to our guest, Gabriel Dillard of the Business Journal, located just down the street here of the studios. And thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week in a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.